Hi, my name is Sarah Chaplin. I'll be hosting a new programme on Conscious Consumer Network called Giant Steps, which will take you off the beaten track, out of your comfort zone and into the heart of the matter. I'll be looking into the truth about climate change and trying to get behind the numbers to discover more about our changing relationship to our planet and its ecology. Each week I'll be inviting a guest to share part of their Monday evening with me to consider how we can stop politicians and lobbyists playing Russian roulette with our health, our bodies, our food, our medicines and our minds. We'll talk about how the mass media's false narratives are now starting to spin out of control and how instead we can look to each other, to our higher selves and our guides to discover the truth about our past, present and future lives. How do we break free from the herd and experience life in all its richness so that we can each reach our potential? How do we begin to dismiss the so-called settled theories of science that have not been borne out by the evidence, just as Darwin feared? And how do we account for giant skeletons in our global closet that have come to light, but were not supposed to be there? Wouldn't it be great if technology was developed for us rather than against us, and if the hidden secrets of free energy and electromagnetism were finally revealed? So over the coming months, by opening our hearts and minds to opposing views and new evidence, and by sharing snippets of music, film and extracts from my latest book with you, I hope to make Giant Steps a firm favourite in your journey towards embodying higher consciousness. Hi, my name's Sarah Chaplin. Welcome to Giant Steps. So every Monday evening for the past 6 months, I've been spending a couple of hours talking to a wide variety of interesting guests, teasing out some of the important issues and ideas with each of them and uncovering more about this fascinating journey we're all on as we embody higher consciousness. Well, tonight is my penultimate show for this network, and we welcome back someone who, if you've been watching Giant Steps regularly, you'll remember from earlier shows. Tonight we're going to be delving into the wonders of light-body integration work, of which I've had first-hand experience as I was Nicholas's demo client, and I can quite confidently say it's one of the most remarkable experiences of my adult life and has greatly assisted me in bringing my soul's mission online. So please welcome back the person who has brought this work to the UK from the United States and further developed this unique practice, Nicholas David Gnarn.
Hi Sarah, thanks for having me on again.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. So we sort of planned this back in January, if I remember rightly, and we talked about doing a kind of general show to begin with and then kind of going into specific areas. So we've done one on soul contract readings. This is in case viewers want to go back and check out our earlier shows that we've done together. Where we had somebody on live and you did her soul contract reading, and now she's done a few shows for this network as well. That's Kathleen Schassler, and also we did one on divine healing, and we had people participate on that show as well, didn't we? So I'm very excited now to be moving on to matters to do with our light body this evening. So I thought we might as well just start right there. Can you explain what our light body is in case there are people watching who are just not quite queued up about that?
Okay, so ultimately we're just pure consciousness. We are an outbreath of source. And what happens is that source, all that is, whatever you want to call it, great spirit, it wanted to expand its consciousness. And so what it did is, if you can think of source as like at the 12th dimension, and we're on the 3rd dimension and there's apparently dense physical bodies, source wanted to know itself by expanding its consciousness. So it basically started to densify itself from pure light into progressively denser and denser forms of existence, and created the dimensions and all sorts of different consciousness and life in that process, all the way down to this 3rd dimension where we are. And so these physical bodies are densified light. And it's not actually who we are. We're consciousness who just happens to be in a physical body. And the purpose of this densification from the 12th, 11th, 10th, all the way down to the 5th, 6th, or 6th, 5th, and 4th and 3rd dimensions is so that we, as sparks of the divine, embodied in a physical form, could forget where we came from. And the journey of life, the purpose of that is to remember that we come from source, that we come from pure love. And the journey of our life is to get back in consciousness to the unity, to the oneness that we come from. That's actually the real purpose of life. And we seem to have lost our way all the time because we've gone so unconscious in this reality But what actually happens is that everything that can be learnt in a physical body, karmically, has been learnt here on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So we're sort of biding our time. We reached maximum separation from Source in 1987 at the harmonic convergence. If you think of it as like a big rubber band went out from pure consciousness, light, all the way through the dimensions, to the point that the us on the end forgot that's where we came from. And we just think we are just physical beings, and we got lost in the scientific mind here in the West thinking it knows everything. But that's just the left brain, which has only been going on for about 350 years. And so the idea is that the rubber band has been let go at this end, because everything that has been learnt that we are now seeking to go back home to oneness. And so what's happening is that the vibration of this reality is increasing all the time. It's what we call ascension. Our bodies are increasing in frequency. And so what eventually will happen is that we will turn to beings of light, back to actually what we originally are. And these bodies will no longer be so dense. They're getting lighter and lighter by the day, to the point where some of those of you have seen the movie Cocoon, we turn to those extraterrestrials who are pure beings of light. But we still have our consciousness like we do now, just that it will gradually get more and more expanded as we get back home to Source. So light body is about turning from this physical form, where the amount of higher consciousness that comes in through us, comes in through primarily through the crown chakra, actually activates our light body. We turn to a being of light, and we move to the next level of existence, which will be the fourth and fifth dimensions. So it's like another vibration. You can think of as we're in BBC One here.
Mm-hmm.
You can't see BBC 2 or 3 or Channel 4, but you switch frequencies, you can.
Mm.
So we're actually going to go to probably the higher astral plane, or the fifth dimension, which is unity.
Mm-hmm. And we'll still be on Earth, do you think? We'll still be on Earth?
Ascension has happened twice before on this planet, and each time it's a little different. So we may be still on Earth, but not in the form as it looks now, because if you switch frequencies, you're in a different reality,
right,
which is always here, just that we can't see it because we're not actually frequency.
So those two previous iterations, were they in Lemurian times and Atlantean times?
Yeah, they were the other two experiments in consciousness to see if enough beings could reach a higher state of consciousness, because we're all linked through what's called the Christ consciousness grid, which is the barrier between Earth and space. Mm-hmm. When enough people in a species, enough beings in a specific species, every species has a Christ consciousness, a morphogenic grid that connects them. When enough, there's a minimal trigger percentage of the population has to reach a high level of consciousness, and everyone awakens. Mm-hmm. And then we can ascend. Yeah. So in the two previous experiments, it didn't go so well because not enough people woke up. Mm-hmm. So we're hoping this time it goes better.
So we're 31 years after the harmonic convergence thing in 87. Was that a kind of a celestial event in our solar system? Some peculiar sort of alignment that meant that was the maximum, as you're saying, the maximum kind of dimension away in the game of separation?
Yeah. Well, the Earth works on a 26,000 year cycle. So it moves through this part of the galaxy because it's where it tilts.
Yeah. As
it moves around, influences our consciousness. So yeah, there is a cycle. There's a very specific cosmic design to the whole thing, where the stars are, where the constellations are, where the Earth is. We sort of we vary between going very asleep to waking up, and we're at a stage of really waking up now.
Yeah.
And that creates a lot of chaos in the world, because a lot of the systems that we still have to live with were designed in a much more sleepy state, less conscious state. And as we can see, it's not working so well. Mm-hmm. And it's not meant to. Actually, what's happening is that they're being dismantled as we shift in consciousness. So eventually enough people awaken in consciousness, and then we can all turn to beings of light, which will be, they call it in the Bible, it's a blink of an eye, the actual ascension process.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll be in one state one moment, and then we'll be in a different reality in another moment. And we don't have any conscious control over it. Our higher selves, the parts of us in the higher dimensions, decide when it happens at a collective level.
So we are going to do this thing as a collective, at a collective level, and there's enough of us now that we've kind of reached that point where we can kind of help the others to make the journey and come into some sort of an understanding or awareness when that moment arises, when the kind of the tipping point. So we're looking for some sort of tipping point, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of the work that you're doing right now is to assist us to be ready to be of service when that tipping point arises. Is that right?
That's the idea, yeah. So
we're
enough
just preparing for ourselves, but obviously the whole point of kind of inhabiting and activating and integrating the higher light and all that, and activating your light body, is that you are fully of service and can support the passage across in whatever form it takes. And for some people, that's going to be quite scary and quite unexpected.
Well, the idea is that there are two ways of ascending. Those who have done enough emotional work on themselves and cleared out the lower frequency emotions that or karmic emotions we carry will more likely go through consciously.
Right.
And that means that you have full memory of the process of transitioning from the third to whatever dimension we go to, probably higher fourth astral plane. So where normally our soul goes when the physical body dies, we go to the lower astral plane. What you see you go through the tunnel of light you see in the Hollywood movies to the low astral plane, or the beginnings of, we're still individuated at that stage. It's the beginning, early stages of the fifth dimension, and those realities will look quite different to this one, although we will be able to create what we see here if we wish, because thought manifests almost instantly once you hit the higher dimensions. So you need to be in a non-fear-based place, a place of open-heartedness and love to be able to cope with that. Otherwise, if you're in a fear-based place with a lot of karma running, then you're going to create an unpleasant experience for yourself. So you're not allowed to go to a dimensional plane where you can't cope. So if the majority of people who are not able to wake up, which quite a lot of people may not be able to wake up, is they'll go through unconsciously and they won't have any memory of being in this reality at all.
Right.
Or they may be the other idea is that they may be taken to another reality, another planet, where they'll continue this third dimensional existence because they're not ready to move to the higher dimensions yet. And so this is a grand experiment on behalf of all that is, because it's us creating the experiment. It's not being done to us to see what happens, because it's different every time and no one knows what's going to happen.
No. So this is a kind of collective project, and we need to sort of, so it's a bit of a process then, as I understand it, to integrate and anchor that higher light into the body to kind of make room for it. Some things have got to leave. You've got to be able to kind of handle that level of energy, let go of a bunch of karmic stuff, entities, devices on. That's what we're going to talk about, isn't it, tonight? You know, is our etheric body, what is in our etheric body that's might be holding us back, and how, and this process that you have pioneered and are offering now is something to really kind of make it a much more streamlined process. So I think before we dive into the different kind of stages of the kind of what a client might go through if they were to undergo complete light body surgery with you, what we need to know a little bit more about the different dimensions, because I know there's different takes on that, aren't there? And it can be quite confusing to get your head around. I mean, we've talked about the fourth dimension, the astral plane, talked about the fifth dimension, talked about everything all the way up to the 12th dimension. Maybe if you could just, I mean, I know when it was being done to me, most of the time I was literally transported to the fifth dimension. And when you come back, you can't, something quite extraordinary happened to you, but you couldn't really describe it. It's quite weird, isn't it? When you come back to this 3D reality and this 3D body, you just have this kind of sense that you didn't want to leave. You had this very blissed out, you're in a very blissed out place where there was no, as you say, no fear, nothing mattered. There was no agenda. There was nothing you had to do or be. And then you're brought back into your body after the process has happened. And, I remember kind of leaving your house after one particular session and looking around and thinking, everything in this world is made out of love. And I just had this completely different, sort of an epiphany, I suppose, that was the kind of fundamental perception that was available to me as a result of having been off in the fifth dimension for a few hours, But let's just kind of talk us through the different dimensions, so that we can kind of, in a way, visualize it and calibrate it a little bit.
Okay, so this reality we're in now is what's left of the third dimension, and in
And there's a first dimension and a second dimension just underneath.
There are, yeah. The second dimension is more sort of basic sort of life forms in terms of consciousness. But the one that we're really interested in is this one, the third dimension, and the fourth dimension, which is the astral plane, where we are no longer embodied, but we still have an energetic form which looks like this. If you think about Patrick Swayze in Ghost, he was in the fourth dimension in the astral plane, but he hadn't even realized he died. His consciousness was still there, just he didn't have a physical body anymore. And so this is as far as rubber band goes, and basically we're in polarity consciousness. We're playing good and evil consciousness, which is why you see so much conflict in the world, because a lot of people see the other as the enemy. Mm-hmm. Okay, and they have enemy patterning. They say you're bad. Okay, so it creates separation. So it's a reality of separation, which is why things don't work so well in this reality. And our job is to transmute all that separation, that sense of that you're separate from me, and to realize and to come to the point of moving back to love and realizing we're actually one great soul having this mass experience in 7 billion plus bodies ultimately, and that it's all just different faces of the divine and just embodied in different ways, and to let go all the differences because they're all artificially created anyway. Mm-hmm. Because each spark of the 7 billion sparks of the divine on earth are just different aspects of source having a particular unique experience. And you might ask, well, why would we want to come for something so intense and challenging? It's because we learn the most when we're in these physical bodies, because the emotional impact on the soul is vastly greater than if you're in the higher dimensions. So believe it or not, we queue up to come here to learn. When you're in the body, you're thinking, why did I sign up for this? I should have put my hand down. But because it's very intense. But this is
that's very unique, and I think that's what the appeal is it? To have this experience. It's quite a unique.
Well, it's a fast way to learn, and the soul just wants to learn and grow in consciousness. That's why we come. Even though sometimes the experiences can be pretty karmically unpleasant, especially when we're younger, because it's to get our attention. So we transform things in our lives. And it's played out on the astral plane as well, especially in the lower astral plane, this polarity consciousness. But the idea is that once you've transmuted enough of this polarity, you can then graduate to the fifth dimension, which is where we're in unity. When you're there, the feeling is just as you were describing, is that everything is one, because it is. And the sense of individuation is not there anymore. You're just your consciousness is part of everything. You're no longer in a physical body. Okay? And from that place, we stay on these different levels, different dimensions, and until we're ready for the next one. It can take a long time, because you're only allowed to go as far as your consciousness can cope with. You're not allowed to go beyond that, otherwise it's not fair, really. You wouldn't cope. Okay, so then the sixth dimension is the next level. It's starting to get beyond our limited polarity consciousness awareness here. That's where this is where the DNA is formed. This is where all the strands of multiple variations on what a human can be are formed from that, and it comes down energetically into this physical form. Because genetics are the primary thing that's played with in the universe by many different races, because every race has a different experience of this ascension process, because all are going through it. Okay, so the face, we all represent many different faces of God, put it that way, when we're embodied. And there are many different races on many planets, on billions of planets throughout this galaxy, who are all going through this ascension process, but experiencing it uniquely because of the way they're built.
When we have our ascension process as a human species here on Earth, or even in some cases partially human species, partially other things, will that be happening simultaneously within our galaxy in other planets that are inhabited by third dimensional reality?
It depends on the state of consciousness and the evolution of a particular planet. I mean, the scientific idea is that suns and planets sort of form randomly, then life sort of crawled out of the ooze by accident, but it's not the case. Like, the whole point of why they were created was for us, for incarnate sentient life, to have this experience we're having, which is why there's always this zone around every star. I can't remember what they call it.
The Goldilocks zone.
The Goldilocks zone, where life will form, and that's deliberately done because every planet and every star has a soul, has a consciousness, so that life can incarnate and go through its cycle of ascensions. I mean, there are 3 cycles of ascension for each solar system. That's the way it seems to work. So some of them are going to be at different stages. Some far more advanced than us, some less advanced. So I don't think it'll go all simultaneously. We may some say we're a trigger for other systems to go as well. But I don't understand enough about the overall galactic process that goes on. But it's all about going unconscious and waking up in every planetary system throughout this galaxy and the universe.
So it's quite likely that other planets that have been identified as sort of too hot to support life or devoid of water or whatever it is, that's only the means to support this kind of life, isn't it, in this heavily dense life form. I mean, it may be possible on other planets for existence to operate outside of the parameters of what we or our scientists have decided are the kind of the kind of boundaries of viability for life forms.
Yeah, well, there's many different forms of life, but there's a lot of water everywhere in the galaxy apparently. And,
seems to fly around.
This sort of life, this sort of four limbs and a head are pretty
common,
prevalent apparently.
Yeah,
it's the most efficient form, so evolution has come up with it, but it just looks different.
Yeah.
So it's just different in different places. But some aren't so different. Some look very similar to us.
Yeah.
A lot of them do, apparently.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the case. So the first stage of your kind of light body surgery process then is something you call body consciousness realignment. Is that right?
Yeah.
So they might have already had their soul contract reading done, so they've got a little bit of an awareness. They're kind of a little bit on a journey, a little bit of sort of inner work going on, and then they might feel that something needs to be realigned, and that's what this offers. Is that right?
Yeah. What happened was that as part of creating this third civilization on Earth for an ascension process, is that these bodies were genetically engineered, which is why there's no missing link. They were created by what's called the Nephilim, or the Anunnaki, which is an extraterrestrial race which is heavily involved in this evolutionary cycle. And they created it out of our DNA, out of their DNA, and out of the DNA of the most advanced hominid on the planet. I think it was about 300,000 to 400,000 years ago. This particular body form was created. I mean, we're all genetically engineered and being manipulated a lot by extraterrestrials. It's the way it works. It's the greatest experiment in the universe is playing with genes, apparently. So these were created to have a certain limited consciousness, and we had the bare minimum of DNA activated so we could actually function and be sentient. And what they did is
2 strands out of the possible 12.
2 out of 12. So we're sort of the real basic model.
We really are the base model, aren't we?
Yeah, we're the basic model. And so what happened then is that they put in place what's called a body consciousness, which is a devic consciousness. It's a nature spirit consciousness within the body, and there's thousands of these little devic beings who have an emotional age of about 3 or 4 years old, who actually make sure that we grow from, say, 2 cells at conception to the 100 trillion we become, which is why most of the time babies come out perfect, because these little guys were spending a lot of time making sure everything grew properly. But these beings are also programmed to stop us from merging our physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies. They keep them separate because the way the energy bodies in a sentient species work determine how its consciousness works, and they're different for every different species. Some have merged mental and emotional bodies. Some have no emotional body. And so
the Dracos have no emotional body?
No, they lost it, yeah. And so what happens is that if we unify all the energy bodies, we ascend because we're oneness. And that's when you can leave the reality. And the way that would look is that you literally disappear and you'd appear somewhere else in the next dimension. And so the job of the body consciousness is to stop you from doing that. keep you in separation for as long as possible, because it's a contract between your humanoid soul. And I say that specifically, as you'll see why I say that in the next part of the conversation. There's a contract between the humanoid soul which says, keep me asleep as long as possible to see if my personality can wake up, because I've come here to experience what the personality goes through to awaken. I want the visceral experience of being totally unconscious and in karmic pain to awakening and moving to more joy and hopefully love and open-heartedness and maybe bliss if you're lucky. And so the body consciousness says, yes, I'll take up that contract. I'll keep you asleep. I'll stop you from awakening. I'll hold your karmic emotional separation in your body and make it really hard to clear it, which is why it seems to take so long to work through issues on Earth, because effectively your body is not yours. You're like a tenant, and someone else is in charge.
Yeah. And would you say, from all your clients and all the experience that you've had of obviously training people now and their clients, that there's a kind of there's a typical age when people come to this point of realization where they start to wake up? Is there a pattern there?
I started doing this work in about 97, and then people in those days were in their sort of 30s and 40s who were waking up. But now we have people from late teens onwards waking up, or actually never went to sleep.
Yeah.
As you know, and so it's more the state of evolution of an individual. It can be anyone from late teenage, 15, 16 upwards.
Yeah.
Can be awakening. And the degree of separation, degree of sense of being separate from all that is a lot less the younger you are. You actually come in with less restriction. And so the idea with the body consciousness realignment is to break the contract between the soul and the body consciousness of staying in separation. We use a thing called vow breaking. We basically have the client engage with the body consciousness and explain what's going on, because it doesn't know what's going on. It's just doing its job because it's emotionally 3 or 4 years old. They're just busy doing their job. And so it's about dialoguing with the body consciousness, explaining they don't have to keep you in separation anymore, and then speaking on their behalf and releasing the vow of that contract. So then, because the soul's trying to go this way and their body consciousness is going this way, so then it moves around, so it moves with you to help you ascend in consciousness. You give them a new contract to co-create ascension, which releases a huge amount of stress and scatteredness and lack of focus in the energy system and the physical body. And you feel very aligned and just at peace, often for the first time. And you realize this thing was really fighting you hard.
There's a lot of kind of contradictions seem to drop away, or the kind of inner turmoil I felt, that was, it really dissipated. Yeah.
My experience of it was just like I was lying on this body of still water at peace, and I could have just stayed there forever because I wasn't scattered anymore. I was very aligned.
Yeah. It must feel like when, what a rock feels like when it gets magnetized and suddenly everything's pointing in the same direction. And
pretty much. Yeah. So then it makes it much easier to ascend in consciousness. It makes it much easier to clear emotional karmic separation because the body consciousness is no longer hanging on to it so strongly. And a lot of that can leave a lot more easily, which means your frequency rises again. Because all our karma, 80% of what we carry is from past lives, is there just for us to transmute. It's a negative context to overcome, so we can then come into our gifts, which is usually the opposite of what we first came. I mean, if we, say, for example, felt betrayal and disempowerment as a result, which can cut very deeply, the whole point of that is to come into our power.
Yeah.
Trust in the flow of spirit again, and then flow with that. And so that means getting all that stuff out is a lot easier. And this is not healing work, the light body integration work, it's more awakening.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction, isn't it? Because healing might happen as a byproduct, or by virtue of the fact that the body consciousness has been realigned, but it's not designed to do that. That's not its primary intent.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. It's awakening.
So let's just dwell on this word Nephilim for a while then, because anybody who's read the Bible will be familiar with that. They're mentioned quite a lot in the Old Testament, aren't they? They crop up quite a lot. But your take on what their purpose is, how long they've been around for, how much of an intervention they've had, genetically on life on Earth, all the way up to, would you say all the way up to Sumerian times, or is that a kind of confusion of timelines?
They've been here at least 60,000 years. I mean, this is a genetic laboratory, an extraterrestrial genetic laboratory primarily. It's been going on at least 500,000 years. And
so going right back to if someone's watching this and going, well, hang on a minute, I'm still trying to get my head around how long hominids, forget all the kind of the we evolved from primates theory, which is not very helpful really. Then the kind of the engineered version of us as a kind of, as you say, a kind of like powered down base model of a hominid that was suited for life on this particular planet with a 24-hour day and kind of, all the cycles that it permits and so on, that we, as long as humans have been on this planet, we have been being genetically hybridized and manipulated.
Yeah, that's the whole point. That's what this reality is about. And it's always been like that. And it's been hidden from us for a very long time. But it's gradually being revealed.
What sort of kind of definitely sort of works for me about that is that they haven't really come up with a decent explanation about when blue-eyed people appeared, which seemed to happen at exactly the same time as a number of other radical transformations in the way we organized ourselves and our societies and our cities and all of that. And they have expressions like random lateral intervention of genetic content or something that the biologists use to explain it away, but it's actually a very poor explanation, isn't it?
Well, the extraterrestrial genetic engineers intervened and introduced different strains of DNA as part of this experiment in consciousness. That's where it comes from, and that's where they are seen as the gods. You talk about Nephilim in the Bible. They're talking. All the different cultures talk about these super beings, and they were just extraterrestrials who presented themselves in certain ways. Some were helpful, some not so helpful. They all have their own agendas. This is the way it works down here.
Are they synonymous with the Watchers? What are known as the Watchers as well?
What do you mean by the Watchers in this case?
In the Bible, I'm just asking a question about whether the Nephilim and the Watchers are they interchangeable terms?
Not familiar with the Watchers, so I can't really say much about that.
So when the Nephilim, what is their role in the body then, in the human body, and whereabouts are they?
Well, the Nephilim were the primary extraterrestrial race who created us because they needed to dig out the gold in South Africa. Mm-hmm. And they didn't have enough of them. They had to dig the gold out, and they dug it out for hundreds of thousands of years, which is where the first human remains are found actually in the gold mines in South Africa, because they engineered us to be slaves, workers. Okay, and that still continues the way the system is built, the way the matrix is built.
This form that we talked about as being quite ubiquitous in the universe, with the two hands and the two legs and the head on top and all that, that's probably a kind of optimized slave design, isn't it?
I think it's an optimized design, full stop. But just that they built us out of a lab, and we don't consider ourselves slaves now, but we still are, but it's just much more hidden. Well, maybe not so hidden now, but that's just the way it's built. And they still run the place. Well, not for much longer, but they still run the place. And so it was all deliberately done so that our souls could have this. Nothing's gone wrong or anything. It's all deliberately done so we could have this experience of limited consciousness. And that's how we work through this and collectively open to love and higher frequencies in consciousness to then transition out of this reality. That's actually the point, because we have to have what we call points of darkness. We have to have races which anchor this separation, which is what their role was. Okay, that was their job contract. Someone had to do it. So the dark forces, that's their role, is it kind of anchoring us in this reality and keeping the separation at its maximum. Yeah, and our job is to work against it, to go back in consciousness. You have two opposing forces, but you need that to have a gradual shift of consciousness and frequency, because it can't go too quick, because a lot of people couldn't cope with it. It's just too much of a shift in consciousness. So it's just the way of gamma separation works, and it happens on all planets in a similar sort of way, apparently. Yeah.
So once you've done the body consciousness realignment, then what's the next part of the process?
It's called Nephilim consciousness or soul removal. We have two souls on board on this planet. We have the humanoid soul I just talked about. But we also have a secondary soul called a Nephilim soul, which is a reptilian extraterrestrial soul, which sits along the spine, and its job is to maintain keeping the body consciousness from us awakening, and to keep the personality from awakening. So there's a contract between the humanoid soul and that Nephilim soul to stay asleep.
Mm-hmm.
So we basically channel what that contract is. And essentially that contract is put in place to create the majority of someone's life experience. And within that you find elements of the soul contract and all sorts of other things. And so in breaking that contract and replacing it with a new one of ascending and moving into the positive gifts that we all bring, provided we work through our karma, that Nephilim soul is freed and released.
Mm-hmm.
Before it's playing its role as a point of darkness. This is not evil or bad, just keeping us separate from source.
Mm-hmm.
So that's its job. It leaves and goes home with great relief on its part and on the humanoid soul's part. And then so more light can come in, more consciousness can come in, so the frequency of the body and the consciousness rises again.
And so some people will recognize in that it sounds a little bit like a Kundalini awakening, that they kind of got this caduceus thing kind of coming up our spine, and that the Nephilim soul is kind of holding us back from ever experiencing that kind of energetic bursting through or breaking through.
That's its job. And you can physically feel this thing locking you down when it's time for it to go, because it can't handle the higher frequency and light coming in. So you can actually feel it at the base of the skull, a clenching, and in the sacrum. When you take it out, someone goes, "Oh, my God, that's a relief," and you realise that someone was on board.
Yeah.
It's not a possession or an invasion. It's always been there. It's just the way we're built.
Yes. Yeah. And so some people's Nephilim souls kind of exert a stronger force than others, or don't want to leave, or
the stronger the humanoid soul in terms of frequency. Okay, the stronger the Nephilim soul to balance it off so it doesn't wake up too quick.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can have some real snarly ones.
Snarly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember one of the things about entering into this work with you was to fill out a form about some of the symptoms that I might have been experiencing of late, and it was quite a long list of different symptoms and aches and pains and mysterious sort of ailments and so on. That often, you often find, don't you, that people talk about the fact that they've got these things going on, and the doctor just fobs them off and doesn't know what to prescribe, or tells them to just, go away and see what happens. But in actual fact, quite a lot of what your work in terms of light body integration alleviates some of these things that we experience as physical symptoms, doesn't it?
Yeah, what happens is that when high light, it means high consciousness from the oversoul, the part of it's not embodied, comes in, it hits the low frequency structures and in the body, which we're going to talk about. You can have things like headaches, numbness, fatigue, heartburn and indigestion, can't comprehend things properly, can't think straight, can't remember what you just said, blurry vision, loss of memory, false Alzheimer's, you think you're going a bit crazy basically, being ungrounded. This comes because it's not a physically based thing, it's just an energetic thing where these structures are overloading in us, keeping us asleep, because higher light's trying to come in to help you ascend. But we put in a lot of structures so we stay asleep, and those structures can't handle that frequency coming in, so we get all these symptoms. And the removal of a lot of these structures leads to a raising of consciousness, feeling of consciously, and we have a feeling, oh, that's better.
So the dis-ease just kind of lifts because we've been enabled to rise in consciousness.
Yeah, there's no physical cause to this. It's an energetic thing. There's no emotional cause either for a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
Even though some people may go and look for it and they can't find anything. So they're a bit puzzled by that, because it's not meant to be healed. It's more about things that are meant to be removed as part of the awakening process that are being triggered by the higher light, higher consciousness coming in.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of etheric crystals that a lot of people have on board, and that's another stage that you would go through then, is it, to remove those?
Yeah, we have up to 20 pairs of double terminated etheric crystals, fifth dimensional. So they're vibrating 2 octaves, or two frequencies above where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
But they sit primarily in our head and upper body.
Mm-hmm.
And they block different multidimensional pathways, things like clairvoyance, telepathy,
Right.
clairsentience, clairaudience, ability to hear spirit. They block a whole bunch of high dimensional abilities to keep us in this limited form.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're hit by this highlight, they glow orange. And basically this causes a lot of the headaches and shorting in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So at that stage, they need to be taken out and those pathways are opened up and higher light comes in and moves through the body and it connects with the DNA and starts to awaken it beyond the 2 strands. So we start to go through what we call mutation, light body mutation process, symptoms, with the DNA starting to let go a lot of its density, a lot of the programming that keeps us from thought forms that keep us asleep. And so that's why we get very tired, because all this stuff is leaving us energetically and physically. It's going to the bloodstream. And sometimes we feel like we've got the flu. It's not flu, it's actually more an awakening flu, and it doesn't turn into a full-blown physical flu at all.
So there's no pathogen there. There's no, quite often, because we go in search of these things because that's what Western science has kind of given us, that mindset that there must always be this root cause that has a sort of pathological.
Yeah, there's no pathogen. It's just awakening that's happening.
And what's the connection between the way that the highlight comes into the body and the Chinese medicine understanding of the meridians and so forth?
Well, we have different fifth dimensional energy lines on us. We have what we call atonal lines come out of the higher dimensions into small and large star over on top of our head, which is the primary power circuit connecting us to the higher self. Then we have what are called axitonal lines, which are all over our body. And the meridian system comes off that system.
Right.
Because this is the primary power supply that keeps us alive. You need more than water, food, and air. Without this connection, you're dead, because this is where the life force comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a pathway for the life force to come into us, and it comes all through our body. And we have what are called spin points, which is where the meridian acupuncture points are. And there are a lot more than the acupuncture points, actually. And they take the energy into what's called the fifth dimensional electrical system in the body.
Yeah.
Feeds life force to every single cell, or 100 trillion of them. It feeds it in there. And that's actually and it feeds into the DNA. So when you open up the consciousness, a lot more light comes and the DNA awakens.
Mm-hmm.
And so eventually it's trying to awaken in a gradual, manageable way, so that eventually every cell will turn to light.
Yeah.
And our high dimensional abilities start to switch on, because it's all in the cells. That's why scientists don't understand what the other 99% of the stuff does, because it's a lot of it's extraterrestrial DNA, a lot of it's high dimensional capabilities, and when they activate it, you start to have other capabilities like telepathy and clairsentience.
So there seem to be some races like the Sami, the Lapps, who've held on to some of these capabilities, and some Native American tribes as well have been able to really have remote viewing capabilities and telepathic capabilities and so on. So it's interesting that some of it, I imagine, is also gone because of, it's just atrophied. We haven't used it. It's falling into disuse, as well as the etheric crystals kind of blocking it. So I sort of feel that it's kind of both things. You remove the crystals, and then you start to use it again, and you start to regain, like anything really, the muscle memory almost.
Yeah, you've got to learn to use it, and because of the Western scientific brainwashing we have, whose purpose was primarily to keep us asleep, to not to get into these capabilities, to move out of the right brain that's 350 years ago, away from flowing with nature in a more feminine way. We went to the more masculine left brain, and look where that got us. And it's about opening to the flow of spirit, and all these capabilities come online on an as-needed basis. It's something we have conscious control over, and the awakening process is more us witnessing and experiencing our own awakening. We're not in charge ultimately. It's the higher self, higher consciousness, which is in charge, but it wishes to viscerally experience it through us embodied.
Mm-hmm.
So another part of us is in charge, but the part of us here is just going with the ride.
We're just the avatar that's giving them that optic. Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So the next thing, I was just going down the list that you gave me. The next thing we come to is these divinity thresholds. I was quite intrigued about these when you were removing them from me. But what are they, and why are they put there? Is that also part of this kind of game of separation, holding us back, and so on?
Yeah. Well, you can think of the etheric crystals as like fifth-dimensional quartz crystals. Okay.
Yeah.
But you can think of divinity thresholds as seventh-dimensional perspex rods and plates that are in the lower body and are up the spine as well. And their job is to prevent what we call the Adam Kadmon, the divine image of man or woman, because we're genderless anyway at a soul level, from fully embodying. It's a template to turn us into a light body. Because when that's embodied, when we're cleared enough of fear-based survival programming out of us, which is what the divinity thresholds keeps in place, then when the time to ascend comes, which is any time now, probably within now the next 10 years, people reckon, we have a template so our whole system knows what to turn into.
Right.
And then what happens is the ascension encodements come from the higher self, and our Merkaba, our vehicle of ascension, triggers. And what the light body work does is it removes as many barriers as possible to that process happening.
Yeah. So
that we have the higher frequency running through us, so we can literally blink of an eye turn to a being of light. And then we return
to Lamborghini body.
Yeah, we return to unity. When we leave this illusory reality, because this is just a projection of consciousness, this entire reality. It seems solid, but it's not. Just our brains tell us it's solid, just like in the Matrix. The Matrix is pretty close to what's actually going on, really, as a metaphor. And its divinity thresholds enable that template to turn to being light to come into the body, and it releases a lot of deep fear-based programming. It also the removal allows us to come fully into our body below the waist as well. Because the more grounded we are with our higher frequency, the more we can deliver our gift. So we need to be grounded and connected and emotionally clear enough at a high enough frequency in that grounding to deliver the gift of our higher self.
So the yogis who realized the chakra-based system, how that worked, they clearly understood this kind of separation between the higher section of the body, let's say above the heart and upwards, and the lower chakras, is what you're talking about, the same distinction in a way.
Well, yeah, they had a good understanding of the stuff, maybe in a different language, but some of this was understood. And so when you clear the divinity thresholds out, what happens is a lot of lower back pain disappears. Okay, digestive issues disappear, low life force disappears, because that was what should have blockage of energy in the pelvic and legs. Your creative flows move, and basically you become more grounded, and you can unify yourself. You're more connected, and basically you've arrived, mostly.
So you feel it sort of more here somehow.
Yeah, you feel more here.
Work done. Yeah. So I'm just thinking that's quite a lot of stuff we've just talked about, and a lot of different stages. How long would it take somebody in real time, say, to get to that stage in terms of their light body integration, activation, so on? How spaced apart do the sessions need to be for them to be their most effective?
Normally we say about a week apart minimum, and after that, whenever it feels right, because people have each person has a different rhythm of awakening. So body consciousness is a couple of hours, nephilim removal a couple of hours, crystals and thresholds another couple of hours. That's probably 3 sessions.
Yeah.
3 2-hour sessions to actually get that far.
Yeah. In
terms of awakening.
And then you should kind of really just go at your own pace then. The individual would report how they're feeling at that point, and you might advise them, give it a few months or give it a few weeks or...
Yeah, I just say when your heart opens to it, and the only thing I would start, other times I'll say, well, I think it's too soon.
Yeah.
Because you haven't integrated something yet. But then after that, it's up to you when it feels right.
Yeah.
But usually what happens when people realize what this is awakening. This is a massive shortcut to awakening, getting on with your mission of service. People usually want to get on with it. That's what usually happens. as you've experienced.
Exactly. I mean, I think I didn't know what I was letting myself in for in terms of all of the stages. So I didn't know that I was in a hurry until we were kind of well underway with it. And then I understood, because I could see the effect that it had on, just my ability to sort of process things and kind of, as you say, work through your kind of karmic stuff. And it all just started to kind of go at a different pace. And I enjoyed that, I mean, I've always been a very impatient person anyway, but I just suddenly felt that I felt less sub-optimized, I felt more equipped to deal with, what my higher self was asking of me,
It's hard to believe how asleep we are until we wake up and you realize, oh my God, how did I function? You remember that?
I know. And also how many layers of the onion that there are, it's not just a kind of, people talk about red pilling as if you just got to pop a pill and then suddenly the world looks different. And I guess it could happen like that for some people, like an on-off switch, but most people it's a kind of slow transitioning out of one perceptual, because it's a total 180 degree turnaround, isn't it? It's not just a slightly different perspective on things.
Well, we're so busy at the coal face of our lives dealing with the karmic stuff our subcontract's creating. It takes a lot to get us to step right back and say, well, what am I doing here? I have an app on my phone for the live feed from the International Space Station. I look at it each day to remind myself, you're on Earth. It's not very big. We're here for a reason.
Yeah.
It's not just earn money and pay the bills and send the kids to university and sort of stuff. You're here to ascend the planet. I do that each morning now. It's very sobering.
Yeah, very sobering.
See the view of the curved Earth on my phone and realize, and I'm getting there as a live feed. And so it just gives perspective.
Yeah. See, there was a reason for your previous existence, Nicholas. This is, that's a kind of really salutary point you've made there, I think.
Well, I used to work in the space industry before I got into this.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Putting up satellites and so on.
Used to do that sort of stuff.
Mentally be that satellite and have a look and check in every day. So getting up onto that plane then, the next thing is all about the astral devices that we may or may not have on board. Does everybody have these? Are there lots of different kinds of them?
We have what are called fourth dimensional astral devices, mostly past life ones,
right,
which we put in place. When we come here, we basically, go to the device shop, pick up certain devices at a soul level, say, okay, I want to experience this. I design my life, I want to have a certain experience. So we need to put in, some people have balls and chains around their legs, some are pulled by big cables out their backs, people have plates in their heads, so all sorts of things to create the limiting experience here. And a lot of them link to past lives. Okay, or if we expect to come in here to do battle and, conflict to come to our power, we're going to have probably a lot of energetic armor on us. And so we're going to be weighed down because we're ready for battle. Mm. And because you're ready for battle, guess what happens in this reality? It comes to you because you're attracting it, because it's more of attraction.
Yeah.
So there are standard astral devices, which most people have, and then there are real custom ones, depending on what you're here to experience. So the purpose of astral device removal, which can range from half an hour to 4 or 5 hours, depending on how heavy your karma is, to remove it all and free you of that karmic load. So you literally physically feel lighter.
Yeah.
If you remember.
Yeah. It's coming back now. It's really weird, actually, you describing some of these things, because obviously in the preparation for each stage, you probably said words to this effect to me, and it just didn't register in the same way. Now I'm kind of trying to sort of look back over it with hindsight and see it objectively what actually went on there. And so it's actually giving me quite a strange feeling to remember now what went on. It's almost like regression therapy happening in my head right now, to remember the feeling of what was there, what you found, what showed up.
The thing is that when you start this work, you're at a low level of consciousness. It's only once something is gone you realize, my God, I was really asleep on that one. That was doing this. But because you've always had it there, you don't know any different. It's like the frog in the gradually warming water. You don't know it's getting hotter because that's all you've ever known. It's the same idea. And we never want to go.
I do remember one in particular. There was a sort of hive mind thing that you removed. Was that an astral device?
it's got a group mind, and they capture it really well in Star Trek and with the Borg. Many extraterrestrial races have a group mind where that's one consciousness in many bodies, but there are astral structures which go with that group mind to create that sense of limitation that you're linked to something much greater than yourself. And many souls like you had one on board, and the point of that is to go from being part of the Borg, let's say 7 or 9 in Star Trek Voyager, to being free from it, which is what happened in season 4, I think it was, and then having to become human and individuated again. It's a perfect metaphor. They really caught that really well, because it's based on what really goes on.
Yeah.
That what they're showing on those TV shows, someone knows what's going on, and so going from being a drone to an individuated human being, it's a vast journey of reclaiming personal power. And so some souls who come from these races embody in human form to do that. That's part of their evolution. Yeah.
No, I mean, that was quite a significant change for me, the before and after, if you like, of that particular aspect of the work that you did, was suddenly feeling that I had my sort of sovereign self
back,
sovereignty back again. Yeah, that I wasn't deferring or kind of feeding information on a sort of in a background way up to this group mind, and it was like I kind of had all my processing power back.
Yeah, I mean, you chucked out all your black clothes and stuff like that, and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yeah. It's weird, isn't it?
Total change of water. Everything changed, didn't it?
It did change. Yeah. So because I'm just looking at the time now, we're about halfway in now. Is that the last thing that you would sort of describe as being the kind of taking off, the removal stage of this work?
Pretty much, yeah. You basically dismantled a lot of the separation programming and beings and structures, and so you're basically hopefully clean enough for us to move on to the next stage, which is the rebuilding of your light body, repairing the damage from all the stuff, and preparing to rise in frequency to be as best prepared for the ascension of the next reality as possible.
And I remember in between each session, although the focus is very much on your kind of your etheric body or your kind of your subtle energy body or whatever, that a lot of your advice to me on leaving was to take it easy, drink lots of water, go and have Epsom salt baths. So we do still have to kind of take care of this physical body, because that's the one that we're trying to anchor the light into, isn't it?
Well, you can think of this like this is our avatar, like in the movie. This is our earth suit.
Yes.
This is the means for our divinity to embody and impact this reality. So you have to look after it, because it's the body takes 7 days to adjust to a change.
Yeah.
It takes time, and we need to keep looking after it and detoxing it.
Yeah.
Looking after it physically and emotionally and everything like that, because it's the means for us to carry out our missions of service here. What we're doing with light bodies, we're getting a much more highly attuned avatar.
Yeah.
Which can handle a much more higher frequency of us coming in, and the more high frequency of us that comes in, the greater the gift we can deliver. So the body's everything. If you don't have that sorted out and not grounded, the mission is not going to happen.
Because I think that's an interesting point. You think that you're just floating off into this other realm where you have no further use of the meat suit or the earth suit, and so people get a bit neglectful. They can get a bit neglectful, can't they? But it's all the more reason to take good care of the body that we happen to be having this experience in. Because otherwise it's just it's not going to work.
Well, we're taking it with us. You see, we're going to turn it to light. So you've got to keep its frequency up. You got to look after it, because it's the vehicle for going home.
Yeah, we're not going to just abandon
No.
it. Well, we are going to abandon this just for a moment, but only for a short break now. I need to go and put my rabbits away because they're wandering around in the garden, and go and grab a glass of water. And I'm sure you might want to do the same, Nicholas. So when we come back, we're going to be talking about highlight integration and karmic matrix reabsorption, all sorts of exciting things, so don't go away. In the meantime, I've picked out a little bit of jazz for us to listen to. This is an Italian band called Hard Swing Mango, and they're playing a tune, believe it or not, called Ascension. So have a listen and see you in a few minutes. Welcome back. So I'm working with Nicholas David Nairn again this evening. We're deep into the intricacies of light-body integration work. For anybody that hasn't heard of that before, I recommend that you check out the website that's displaying across the bottom of the screen right now. Just check what that is, www.lightbodyintegrationwork.com. So that's all one word, lightbodyintegrationwork.com. And so if you missed the first bit and you want to kind of backtrack a little bit, then go and check that out. A lot of very interesting material on there. Can you just give us a quick lowdown, Nicholas, what you've got on that website?
We give an overall introduction to the concept of light-body integration work of bringing higher consciousness in, removing structures, beings, and devices which create the sense of being a limited small human being, that we're separate from all that is God, source, and we're never going to get home, to the removal of these structures and to the activation of our light body, so that eventually we turn to a being of light. And hopefully, if we've done enough karmic clearing, we can do that consciously and take the remembrance of being in this reality to the next one, which will be in the high astral plane, fourth dimension, or the high the fifth dimension. And the idea is to consciously take that memory. That's the most important thing of all, to take that memory of being in this limited reality to the higher dimensions. That's actually what immortality is really about. It's about memory. It's not about physically lasting for a long time. It's about taking the same consciousness all the way through.
So if we use the kind of hard drive analogy, we don't want to kind of die and have our hard drive wiped and then, we're all starting all over again and it was all a waste of time.
Well, not quite a waste of time, just that we don't have full access to the hard drive. It got erased, but it's still sort of sitting there, and we get access to a little bit with a bit of data recovery from Spirit. Yeah. This is where you've got full access to it at whatever level you're at.
Do you think that sometimes these technological paradigms, because now obviously we're into kind of cloud-based technology, aren't we? So the cloud obviates the need for the hard drive or things sitting on a hard drive at all, doesn't it? The cloud is almost like the higher self or some sort of, place of storage of things outside of the body, let's say outside of the computer, aka the body. So if we kind of go with the cloud computing analogy, then we're kind of having this experience in this physical body, but we're kind of transmitting it to the cloud, and then the cloud is the retained memories as we go back to source.
Well, what happens is that we have a thing called the Akashic Records, which sits in the higher dimensions, which is basically the memory of the creator of every living being's embodied experience. Because the whole point of having, in this case, 7 billion sparks of the divine on earth embodied in earth suits or avatars is to feed all that experience back to the Akashic Records, because that's how the creator learns. Well, literally pretty better experiences, actually. It wants to have the visceral experience of all of us down here. So yeah, I guess you could call that the cosmic cloud if you wanted.
Yeah.
In a way, and you can think of the way our computing works as a gradual networking into unity. And the internet forms on every civilization eventually.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what I'm really saying. I'm not using it as a kind of useful analog to aid understanding. I'm actually saying there may be a reason why we've got to the stage here on Earth where we've developed this kind of technology this time around, because it's also analogous to the process of ascension that we're all wittingly or unwittingly going through.
Yeah, well, all is connected and all is known eventually.
Yeah. It's kind of amazing, really. So before the break, we were talking about all the different sort of devices and thresholds and so on that might need to be removed from the body because they're kind of holding us back and blocking our ability to kind of embody higher light and so on. So how do you perform the higher light integration? And I'm kind of also wanting to talk a little bit in this half of the show about, it's not enough, is it, to just turn up at your doorstep and have these kind of 2-hour sessions, fortnightly intervals or something for 6 months, and then say, haha, job done, I can fully embody, my higher self right now, and I can ascend anytime I like. Because you're talking also about doing the karmic work at the same time, aren't you? That you can't just expect that's the only sort of work, if you like, that you need to do to kind of get to that point.
Yeah, that is a very important strand, that you've got to clear your karma. Yeah. You've got to transmute the karmic load into your gifts of service.
Yeah.
Do the deep emotional past life work and whatever you need to do to clear whatever's in the way between you and connecting back to higher consciousness. Because that low frequency program drops your frequency, and if your frequency is not high enough, you can't ascend in consciousness. If your emotional body is full of this heavy dark karma, which we all carry, it's the nature of coming here. We take on a specific selected load from past lives. So we have the awakening process of light body, but then we use divine healing, which we talked about in the previous show, last set of shows, which is where we clear the karma. And that's most important, because when you clear enough of that and you've got the circuits open with the light body work, then you've got the best chance of ascending consciously. Because otherwise what happens is basically it's the heavy karmic load will stop your light body from activating fully.
But you have to sort of see that that's needed, don't you? You have to fully acknowledge to yourself that, rather than kind of kidding yourself or hiding from certain aspects of your shadow self or kind of letting your ego talk you out of things, etc., etc. You really have to kind of face up to some stuff about yourself in between sessions. I would say, speaking, from personal experience, but also talking to others. That there's a little bit of legwork on the part of the individual. It can't all just be done to you, can it?
Well, yeah, because what happens is that when you bring higher frequency and consciousness in the body, anything which is not a match for that frequency will start to come out your cells, which is your karma.
Yeah.
High frequency and low frequency karmic patterns will come out.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, and some of it will be mostly pretty unpleasant. So we can use the light body to trigger them. But then you got to use things like divine healing, which is what we use to clear the program. So lighten separation, emotional separation out. Otherwise the body's frequency won't rise, you see. Because the two can't be in this body at the same time. It just doesn't work very well that way. And also sometimes the higher, more subtle frequency parts of us will come in, and if there's too much karmic stuff, they won't come in fully. Our soul components won't fully embody because they can't handle the low frequency stuff. So they may bounce out again. So you got to get that out. Then they go, there's some energetic space now, I can handle this. They come in.
Yeah. Yeah. So it might not happen the first time. And
No.
so the kind of process then of higher light integration, what effects, I mean, what would a person be experiencing before and after that? I mean, I suppose people can only relate to these things sort of quasi-experientially, can't they? As well as understanding the general purpose in doing it. But also people want to understand what is it going to feel like, don't they?
What it does is it builds all these 10 primary energy circuits in the body, which it rebuilds, which get damaged just from being in this very energetically abrasive reality. It's very dense here. It rebuilds all the eternal lines, you to higher self, the external lines on the body. We replace all the chakras. We build lots of grid works which connect us to...
It's kind of like a reconstruction process almost.
It is, yeah. It basically rebuilds all the light body, all the different lines of light on us, fifth-dimensional lines of light, and connects us to higher consciousness. So basically we have we have more optimal and stronger pathways for higher consciousness to come in. And it can be a feeling of expansion, almost like we are rehydrated energetically, and that we're more switched on, we're more conscious because we are. And because if you be in this reality long enough, your systems get very degraded because it's very intense, the impact on us, this reality. And basically the whole point of it is to get more light and consciousness to the DNA. And as these circuits are opened up, the DNA activates more and more and more and more to the point where you will turn to a being of light at the right time. So it's trying to get us to the threshold of being ready to turn to a being of light.
So all these phrases that we have, I mean, I don't know whether they exist in other languages, but I'm sure there are similar ones, being kept in the dark and...
literally.
It's so literal, yeah, when you kind of start to talk about this kind of process, isn't it?
Yeah, we are being kept in unconsciousness, and each of us...
I'm just so interested in how we've made it, how we've normalized it, and we've kind of, we've actually encoded it into the way that we use phrases and words, and stopped even thinking about that means something at a more, at the subtle energy body level, as well as, as our physical in our physical reality. Yeah. So the big one, as I recall it anyway, in terms of underestimating the kind of the how knocked out I was going to feel after it. Although you did warn me. I mean, you did warn me. I'll give you that. Is this this part of the process called the karmic matrix reabsorption? And you've got a kind of way of explaining that in the elevator pitch for that I think is quite amusing.
Yeah, well, for those of watching who've seen The Matrix, this is the real red pill, and I had mine in 1993 from Teshiro Tachiren, who channeled this work. She was a walker who channeled this work, and I only ever taught one class in this work, and then walked out of the body and left.
Wow. It was just one time only that taught that class.
I only taught this class in this work, and so basically it's where you connect you connect to the universal grids, and Archangel Ariel and your higher self go through all your karmic patterns over about 3 or 4 hours and basically erase and remove what's a substance called karmic matrix, which looks like a grey cobweb energy that carries your soul contract program and all your karma. Basically, they start stripping it out of you. They take it out of you. But it's only if you have done enough emotional work and have progressed enough and shown dedication to being on the path of awakening. It doesn't work if you haven't done any work. Sometimes nothing happens. So it's not a shortcut. But for a dedicated light worker who really wants to get on with it, it can take off 5 or 6 years of work easily. Yeah. And so the stuff is literally taken out of you, and then a whole bunch of new stuff of high dimensional qualities that you need to continue the mission are infused. So you basically wake up. I woke up for the first time at 33. I was in Denver, Colorado. I think I've been asleep for 33 years. It was shocking. I could barely walk straight. It's a bit like Neo when they unplugged him from the Matrix. It's the same. It was the same experience. I saw the Matrix 6 years later. I think that's what I went through. I had a headache for 2 days,
Mm.
and I was looking at the world with brand new eyes, and I saw just how asleep I'd been, and it was shocking.
Mm.
But that's how asleep we do get when we come into these earth suits, these avatars.
Mm-hmm.
So it is like the red pill, and my life totally changed. I left my corporate job within 4 years of that, started this Centre for Conscious Ascension, this business. Everything changed because I got switched on. I woke up, just like Neo's life changed completely. So yeah, it is the red pill. Well, that was my experience. A lot of people have that really strong experience. And then a whole bunch of stuff they thought was permanent, embedded, and never get rid of it, was just gone completely from their life, completely gone. Because the soul said, okay, I'm done. I said, we don't need that anymore. You learned enough. Next. So
I think that's a big, when you talk about the sort of work that you need to do as an individual to really make this have any effect at all, the karmic matrix reabsorption in particular, it's that kind of letting go of all the things that you've allowed to define you, letting go of all the kind of preconceptions about, I'm the sort of person that does this, or I'll never be any good at that, or all those, a lot of belief work needs to shift as well, doesn't it? A lot of kind of ego attachments and a lot of cord cutting, often with past relationships that you've allowed to define you or kind of hold you back, or so that we're fully standing in our power. I think that's a big part of it, isn't it? That the light is a form of power that isn't abusive.
What happens is that any ego-based identity will dissolve. So you can't be attached to the third dimensional reality of stroking the ego and looking after it and having the biggest this, that, or the other, or the most money. All that will just go.
Yeah.
It's only when you're ready to be totally dedicated on the path to follow your heart, follow your spirit, does this actually work. And if it does, it will just clear a big pathway of everything which is in the way of that happening. Okay, so it's very powerful like that. So if things are getting really stuck and you feel you want to make a breakthrough, or old stuff keeps happening again, that's probably the time if you're on the path to do that, because it'll just blow all that out of the water. Mm-hmm. And you can just get on with it.
Yes.
That's what it does. And what it basically does is that it's basically the whole body of work is really a karmic dispensation that came from the souls on earth saying, okay, we've learned everything we can learn. Can we just go home, please, God? And karmic board of earth said, okay, we will supply this what's called karmic bypass technologies, light body integration work, and we'll train certain individuals to deliver it on earth. Because it's bypassing your karmic process completely, especially the karmic matrix reabsorption. Mm-hmm. It's just taking it out because there's no point in staying here anymore because everything's been learned. So let's go home. Yeah. And so this is why this technology is here. It was a response from our free will choice here on Earth to actually go home. Yeah. And it accelerates the process each individual who has it, so they can then deliver their gift, raise their consciousness. Because the more people are conscious, the more they will raise the frequency of everyone else around them. So this is why this work is here on Earth.
And I think we need to dispel the myth that it's all kind of sweetness and light and rainbows and unicorns, don't we? Because there's some quite messy stuff that that happens as a result of going on this journey. I mean, I know from personal experience, that you feel a little bit of a sort of emotional wreck for a few days after some of the stages. You feel kind of spaced out, cleaned out, wiped out, all of those things, while your brain just adjusts or your body just adjusts. It's quite an extraordinary process. And also I think a lot of anger bubbles up, and a lot of those kind of, the shadow sort of sides to yourself kick out, don't they?
Well, the whole identity of who you thought you were dissolves. And the ego is not too happy about that, because it's very much attached to holding on to the way things are, being in a place of suffering, and maintaining its little kingdom. Yeah. And this sort of work basically dismantles a lot of that.
Yeah.
So the whole point of this work is the whole body work is to follow spirit without hesitation each moment. That's the whole point of it, because when we do that, we follow with what opens our heart in each moment, with that courage, then going beyond human limitation and social rules and that sort of stuff, we're following our spirit. That's how we change this place. That's how we grow this place into heaven on earth, or a much better, more unified place, because it's very chaotic and disharmonious a lot of the time. So we as individuals, create this bubble of higher consciousness around us. And if enough of us do that, that high frequency transmutes the low frequency stuff we have to deal with in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So we're creating these holographic bubbles of higher consciousness. And if enough people do that and it joins up, you get a different sort of world, which is starting to happen.
And it's interesting, isn't it, to see how much the fear programming or the attempts to affect us through the kind of fear mongering and the mainstream media is having less and less of an effect, it seems to me anyway, as time goes on, that they will kind of there will be a sort of staging of an event designed to distract us and kind of scare us and make us all kind of fear for our lives and so on. And each time I've noticed over the last 2 or 3 years that these things have happened, people they jump less, they kind of react less, and they don't, they're not as so manipulable into having their kind of fear programming buttons pushed.
Well, people on a whole, we've woken up a lot more. So we're not subjected to not as impacted as much. We can see, I think they're doing surveys, and was that 95% of people believe that all the mainstream media is all false. Some vast number of people just don't trust it anymore because it's been going on so long.
Yeah.
And the reality of what we deal with and what's being said don't match anymore.
I was just reading an article before we came online tonight about a lot of CEOs in Silicon Valley now are worried, in the sort of aftermath of, Bezos and Zuckerberg being taken to task over, and others as well, about some of the more, intrusive things that they've been getting up to with our data and so on. And the whole kind of, big data was a kind of very exciting, sexy project for a while. And now it's a very, it's one where they've overstepped the mark, and we don't want, and there's some advertising now, isn't there? I don't know if you've seen it, that Facebook are trying to do all these kind of touchy-feely adverts saying we're going to get back to what you really wanted us to be doing in the first place, which was connecting you to each other better and making you get more out of your lives. And you just think, okay, they're probably kind of bolting the stable door after the horse has already left. But this CEO in Silicon Valley was saying that this is, it's sort of disastrous for them, because they feel that it's called into question a lot about the kind of, it's made everybody think that all technology has a nefarious side to it, and that there isn't, that kind of beneficence, around technology anymore like there was in the sort of 1950s. We've gradually drifted through come out the other end of the Cold War, and then there was, there's been good technology, but on the whole we're tending to be less trustful of it, or just less not fearful of it, but just saying we don't need that, we don't want that, we don't need that, we don't relate to that, it's not going to have power over us.
Well, I think the breaking of trust, like with Cambridge Analytica and stuff, that has a massive impact. So people are very skeptical and questioning. So that loss of trust will probably be very hard, if not impossible, to rebuild. So, and all these companies rely on us as customers. So break trust with your customer and you have a problem.
Yeah.
Especially on the scale of what's happened.
Yeah. But it's sort of bigger than trust as well, isn't it? Because trust doesn't have to kind of transgress ethical boundaries necessarily, but in this case, it's done, hasn't it?
It did. It did. So you just can't do anything you want, because if you're doing something from a lower state of consciousness as a business, then eventually your customers who are rising in consciousness will say, well, that's unacceptable, and they will leave. But if you're doing it from a higher state of consciousness on the basis of service to others, then you're going to be pretty busy as a business. That seems to be the way it's going. So you cannot get away with the things you used to, the lower consciousness business practices. We want to talk about that sort of thing. You can't do it anymore because the internet is, even though it's their tool, the news spreads instantly. Yes, yeah, and we're in this sort of surveillance society that it's easy to spot when it happens right away, and the speed, the kind of wildfire with which news can spread, as you say, is kind of a good thing as well as a bad thing oftentimes. It was interesting to think about, now we're sort of spreading this out a little bit and looking at the kind of impact then to go out into the world again, which is, it's a bit like Buddha, isn't it? You kind of seek enlightenment, you seek, to bring kind of higher light into your bodies through going through a process of like your lotus light body
surgery process, and then you've got to kind of get to work, haven't you? And one of the things that you've been doing as another part of your business is assisting businesses to kind of embody, in a way, higher light, and to kind of go about things as you were just describing in a way where they feel that they're able to bring their soul's mission online through their business and find real alignment between what really matters to them at a soul level and what they're doing with their day-to-day reality. And I must say that if I was to be honest with you about anything that I've struggled with as a kind of person that's come out the other side of your work, it's that kind of sense of, you know, how do I direct my time, my energy, my gifts to the best advantage. And it's not you know, I feel as though I've got lots of options and I'm keeping some of the options open. I mean, in a way, one of the reasons why I'm stopping doing this program is because I'm still exploring, you know, is it better if I put more of my energy into some things that I've invested a lot of time into previously, and it may be that I go full circle and this is a part of what I needed to be doing, but I need to go and discover that. So if anything, I've kind of come out the other end of it, and that's been my only that's been the only question mark hanging over things. I feel ready and willing and kind of able and cleaned out and cleared out and switched on and all of that. But my only question remains is how best to direct my time and my efforts and my energy, and whose interests am I going to be serving, and how do I reach people? And because I have, you know, you come with, like you say, you wake up at a certain moment in your life, and your CV up until that point was your sort of a sleep CV, wasn't it? You know, you chose to go to uni and study something, and you got a job with so and so, and then you moved to this other, and so that there's the kind of part of your career path that happened when you weren't really aware of all these things. And then there's maybe a kind of transitional bit where you're starting to feel a bit uneasy or unhappy about how things were going and wanting to change and feel more connected to what you're doing and more believing in what you were doing. And then there's the bit afterwards and that's just where I'm at right now. I'm kind of in that sort of searching around phase where I know that things are going to turn up, and it's a kind of, it feels quite creative and quite open-minded, and I'm not trying to force it, you know. I'm just trying to wait patiently, and things will emerge.
Well, I think the thing is, when you go through a process like the light body integration work, and it's and a bit of divine healing as well, is that a lot of the ego wants and disappear. It comes down to, because light body is ultimately about opening the spirit, opening the heart, embodying higher consciousness, allowing the flow of the soul and the higher self to open your heart in each moment to the next right action. And that's called, I mentioned it before, following the spiritual signature. Yeah. It's not a left brain masculine process. It's a very feminine process, just feeling in the moment, what shall I do now? Mm-hmm. And that guides us. That's the best guide, because higher consciousness has a much bigger perspective on what's going on. But often higher consciousness has an idea of what it would like to do, but we in our avatars and our earths have to go and try it out for real and see, well, does that actually work here? Because sometimes it doesn't. Yes. Because the idea they had up there doesn't translate so well to this reality. So you got to go and try things out. And half the time they don't work, from my experience. Even what apparently are good ideas, and some sort of off the cuff things, maybe why don't we try this? That becomes the winner. That becomes something you love doing, passionate about, and actually people respond to it in terms of delivering your gift. So I see it as a matter of trial and error. Does my heart open to something? Let's try it. Yeah. And that's part of the journey as well, isn't it? Yeah, and so you basically, you're testing things out in terms of what you like doing. Do people like what you're doing? And to match, then you have a gift to offer. Yeah. And then, so you've got to basically go and try it out. You can't figure this stuff out, because a lot of things just need to be tried, and it'll become pretty apparent, so, early on, is it going to work or not? And if it doesn't, then you do something else, which still opens your heart. Yes. So, that opens your heart doesn't guarantee it'll work. So I think it's about experimenting really in this sort of field, in the alternative field. What am I most excited about? I love teaching. I love writing books. because I love seeing people grow in consciousness. I like to spark people to deliver their gifts, because I see so many people get so far, but then they get stuck because they haven't cleared enough their issues, or their ego's too strong and stopping them from getting there. So I choose the people who are prepared to go the whole way, who really want to grow and make a difference, because I don't have time to struggle with the people who don't want to grow so much. They need to work with someone else. So you get down to what's your, like, the genius zone or the sweet spot or whatever, what you love doing and the people you love doing it with, and just find out what that is and what the offering is. And if it makes your heart sing and expand, then you're in the right place. But often it will require trying something on for a while.
Yeah.
And seeing, is it working?
Yes.
No. Yeah. Then I might leave that. I might do something else. But you never know.
That's part of the practice as well, isn't it? You know, the kind of not minding what the outcome is, you know, not needing it to succeed so desperately that your ego gets attached to it or tries to take credit for it when it does work and so on. You know, so every moment of every day is an opportunity to practice, really, you know, how it is to kind of operate with that kind of non-attachment way of thinking about things, but still with the right amount of effort. You're not just being laid back and kind of not doing anything.
Well, yeah, because the ego is very temporary anyway, and its attachments to things and it's wanting to fluff itself up, it's still very temporary, and they never last. So it's ultimately, what is the flow of spirit desiring within you? What does it wish to do next? And following that in each moment and being unattached to the outcome, because when we're unattached, it opens to lots of new possibilities to come in our lives and the lives of others we work with. When you think about how your life was 10 years ago, you never imagined you'd be doing this, would you?
No, not in a million years.
Me neither. So not what I'm doing now. So that means, well, what's going to happen in the next 10 years?
Yeah.
All sorts of amazing things and people and opportunities turn up if we follow the heart and have the courage to follow that, even though it may go against everything, which seems sensible. If we follow that, usually it works out.
Yeah.
Usually it works. It's not about being impulsive, it's about just going with the feeling, saying and doing and acting accordingly to the flow of spirit. And that's the magic. When you enter a different world, because the energy creating the reality by the law of attraction is actually your higher self coming through you. And if you're clear enough emotionally and energetically have raised your frequency, it literally will go out from you. And it's actually creating a local bubble of reality around you, even though everyone else may be in a different reality. It's actually creating a reality. So you're actually literally creating it by being clear enough so you live a completely different sort of life.
Yes, yeah.
To those around you who are still subjected to the strong impact of the matrix. Because higher consciousness transmutes lower consciousness. So literally you're creating your reality consciously by following that flow. So that's when the magic happens. So it's not about, will the matrix allow me to do this? It's like, do I have enough drive to create that in the matrix? Because we are sparks of the divine. We are sparks of the creator. We're not subject to the rules. There's rules in the matrix, but you can actually bend them a lot if you connect to the higher consciousness that you are, because it will go and create something different. When something shouldn't appear at all, but they will.
Yeah.
You see, so it's a matter of taking charge. So what do I desire here? Not what will the reality allow me to do? And then magic happens. Because it's coming from
the miracles
to us and through us. This is actually how we as light workers carry our mission out. But you've got to get clear enough emotionally with our karmic clearing and with embodiment of higher consciousness with light body to actually get to that stage. And that's when life becomes really interesting.
Yeah, you got to get out of the way to let that happen.
Yep.
So tell me what's happening in your life then, the book that you're writing right now.
I'm thinking about how to take the soul contract work to another level, how to help people understand their relationships with those close to them, friends and family, partners. I'm starting to think about how to write that. That's what I'm doing next. But it's taking a long time. It's a lot more complex than the first book, Little Subcontract Decoded. So that's where I am at the moment.
Yeah, that sounds like a nice challenge.
Yeah.
And then if people wanted to come and experience the work that you do, they don't have to come to your place, do they? You offer a lot of it in a virtual setting on Skype and so forth.
Yeah, we do it on Zoom.
Yeah.
We offer the Light Body Work, lightbodyintegrationwork.com is online, and we have Free Up Your Life with Divine Healing. I think it's .com or .net. If you want to clear the emotional patterns, and the main website is Center with an ER for consciousascension.net.
Yeah.
And I do 90% of the work online anyway, because most people aren't in England anyway.
Yeah, sure, yeah. So you can, would you recommend somebody who hasn't been through the process of having their light body activation done, that it wouldn't be sensible to train to be a light body surgeon until you've kind of gone through that process yourself?
You need to sort of experience it, and we teach the Lotus Surgeon light body training every 2 years. Classrooms, because it takes 2 years to run.
Yeah.
And the next stream to do the sort of work that we just talked about the past hour and a half starts in October here in England. It has to be done in person. All the other courses like Soul Contract and Divine Healing can be done online, but this has to be done in person. And it's not just to learn the techniques of this work, but it's actually a full awakening, because you had to move into unity consciousness. So some people come just for the awakening process. It's sort of like it's 8 modules, and we do 2 modules at a time, 6 days in total every 6 months. And what happens is the people who do it, they usually fully come online with their real mission on Earth. They completely transform in 2 years. You were the demo client for that, and you saw how much they changed. And they're all getting out there doing their work now for the last training. So the purpose of that is to spread this work, so that we can wake up as many people as possible and ascend the planet. That's the purpose of it.
So you seem to have had people not just geographically from all over, but from a lot of different walks of life and different previous incarnations, if you like, career incarnations and so on.
Yeah, all sorts of people turn up for this work. It's sort of like you've got to be ready for this conscious awakening work. It's you're either ready or you're not. There's nothing in between, and people only get drawn to this. It's like a deep soul, heart-based calling. Like, I've got to do this. The soul draws them to us, the Center for Conscious Ascension. And if they're not meant to do it, they never find us.
Yeah,
it's very black and white the way this works, because of the frequency this work runs at. So it's ready for a very dedicated light workers who want to go the whole way and get their mission online. That's what we do. That's our job. So it's the right-hand side of the bell curve, the statisticians, early adopters.
The early adopters, yeah.
Light workers who really want to get on with it and do whatever it takes. Are the ones who turn up.
And the kind of the bulk, the top of the bell curve, will they eventually find a way to just kind of coattail on the people who have done this work and kind of get some of it, get a whiff of it?
When we started this 20 years ago, the level of consciousness was a lot less, but what we do it was really out there then, but now it's more acceptable when people are much more into it. We don't have to couch some of the terms we use, because some people couldn't handle some of the concepts. But now people just come in and just want to get on with it, really. So it's changed significantly. So, yeah, people at the top of the bell curve, some of them turn up for this because they realize that I've got to do this properly. So shall we get on with it? That's people's attitude now. So
can you give us an example of a way in which you might have had to explain things or hold back a little bit in the early days, that there was something just a bit too far out there about what you were doing?
Well, we didn't used to talk about Nephilim, reptilian, extraterrestrial souls on board when we first started this, because most people couldn't handle that concept.
Right.
We talked about it as a Nephilim consciousness. But now we're quite happy to talk about it, because people say, I felt that, get it out.
Yeah. It's wild, isn't it?
It's just like, oh, we're just going to buy a pizza. Let's get that thing out. It's been bugging me for years, Nicholas. I've had enough.
Yeah.
When can we start? Can we start tomorrow? Can we get on with it? And so that's the way it is now, which is very refreshing.
It was interesting because obviously I wasn't reading through you produce these amazing, for anybody who does Nicholas's course or is thinking about doing Nicholas's course, you do produce these amazing manuals, that are part of the course materials that you walk away with, are these big lever arch files with all the diagrams and the detail and the kind of, the wording to use for the vowel breaks and all of that. It's very, very detailed. It's nothing kind of airy-fairy about it whatsoever. But one of the things that was interesting was how, in, like you say, you do it in this sort of 2-year cycle, because that's the fastest you can kind of teach a course as complex as this and as sort of high level as this. But in those 2 years since you last taught it, things have changed and moved on, and some of the things that you were teaching, you were saying, oh, it's not necessary now, or we've adapted that now because it doesn't take as long now, you don't need to do that anymore because we have embodied more high consciousness. It was so interesting to hear you kind of describe some of the areas where the course, from one iteration of the same course, has kind of moved on and it's evolving in its own right.
Yeah, we're always learning new things, and the what we call the medical core, the fifth dimensional team of extraterrestrial beings who carry the light body work for ascending planets. They just find they see how we respond to it, and they say, here's a better way, because they don't always know what's going to work on a particular species, you see. So they take the feedback and come up with better solutions. So it's continually continue R&D basically with this work.
Yes,
continuous. It's manual changes in the middle of a course sometimes, because they say, try this.
Tear this page out. Put this.
So we did the advanced training in April. And they were evolving it as we went. So I sent out a new manual basically a couple of weeks ago to the light body surgeons. So it's not static at all, this work. It keeps changing because the ascension process is accelerating. We're much further down the path. So some things we thought were necessary are unnecessary now, and we just strip them out, put new things in that work better.
Yeah. And you're okay with that level of redundancy about some of the early stuff that you may have taken a lot of time over? You have to be, don't you? Because you have to have non-attachment as the teacher of it.
Well, it's more what are the best and fastest and most effective tools to ascend human consciousness. That's all I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And if something's redundant, well, we're not going to do it anymore. We have a better way. But I like developing new things and bringing through new things. And there's always new ideas coming in with this to keep changing things. It's hard to keep up sometimes because
I imagine,
it's speeding up this whole process of ascension. So.
Well, and there's a lot of different aspects to what you're doing, so it kind of touches on a lot of different techniques as well. So your next Lotus Light Body Surgeon training for practitioners who want to do it to others starts in October.
So that's in October, yeah.
And you need to come to Surrey to the Centre for Conscious Ascension.
Yeah.
And it will be the first 2 modules of the kind of whole program of 8 modules. What else are you offering around that? Going into the autumn? Are you doing training for divine healing and that sort of thing as well?
Yeah, we're running a Divine Healing 1 training, which is a healing intensive to learn to heal your karma in the fastest possible way, based on ask and you shall receive, and the higher self basically cleans out the layers of your ego onion. The next one for that runs on the 28th to the September to the 1st of October. You can look on the website under centreforconsciousascension.net, and if you click on trainings, then Divine Healing, you can find out about that. If you want to understand the spiritual map of life, the soul contract of how you're built, or how your clients are built, you can look under soul contract reading on the website, and then look under training level 1. We teach that on the 25th, I think, 25th to 29th of October. We're teaching level 1, how to do birth charts. What's the fundamental program that's creating your client's reality? Because if you understand that, you can then help them transmute those programs.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's very useful as the kind of baseline diagnostic tool, really, isn't it? The soul contract stuff.
Yeah, once you understand that, you cut away 80% of what you think is going on, get down to 20% of stuff that's actually creating the challenges your client faces. Same with Divine Healing, you can just get to the patterns and use the combination of the soul contract work to see the spiritual map of what someone's up to, creating, and the Divine Healing to clean the pathway using the soul contract work knowledge of the programming, slowing them down from rising in consciousness. And then you combine that with light body, which is embodying higher consciousness, and the 3 of them together, it's a very rapid way of awakening and getting on with the mission of service here.
It's cool. And the other thing I was going to ask you about was earlier today I was looking at some of the human design concepts and the sort of diagrams and as another way of kind of finding out a little bit more about how we're built and how we've been genetically, what the templates are and so on. And I just wondered how you see the kind of overlap between the work that you're doing and the understanding that you have of the kind of subtle energy body and so on, and the way that the kind of concept of human design works. Maybe you could just say a little bit about that for us.
Well, you can think about the soul contract work. So I've worked with human design a lot. You can think of the soul contract work as giving the spiritual map of someone's life. What is the optimal pathway to follow by aligning with your soul destiny, your life purpose? Because if you follow that, then life's going to open and flow for you. If you don't follow it, life gets tough.
Yeah.
So human design is talking about the type of vehicle you energetically carry to go down that pathway.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the map with soul contract, where you want to go. Human design is the specific vehicle and the way that vehicle behaves as you go on that journey.
Right.
And between the two of them, it's very powerful. And if you throw in astrology as well, then you have 99.9% of what you need to know as a human to navigate your avatar without having too many bad crashes.
Everybody should be taught this at school, shouldn't they?
Well, yeah, they should do. Unfortunately, we don't at the moment.
Yeah, that's a whole other subject. But I mean, just give us your little heads up then of how would you change if you were given the job for the day of, redesigning the curriculum. We've seen our children go through the sort of standard British education system now and nearly come out the other end of it. What are the biggest things that's wrong with that we could fix that would help these indigo children sort of deal with things better?
Well, I think if you understood the human design, soul contract and astrology, then you understand the fundamental core soul drives the child has. And many alternative schools are trying to attune to their natural way they want to learn. So you could use this very accurate spiritual information to develop a curriculum around the natural learning and proclivities of children to bring out the best in them, not forcing them into these exams and processes where they've got to fit, and also torturing the teachers in the process as well to fit in with a system that just wants to turn out worker drones. Okay, and each is from the same mold. I mean, each individual's natural way of being is respected and enhanced. So then you'd have individuals who'd be much more capable of delivering the gifts to the world, and just think of the change that would create. So it goes with the natural learning flow, not with a system that's gone a bit crazy, really. And it's not serving anyone in the end. It's not really creating a better world. So to deliver the gifts of our children, this is how you create a better world. This is how because we don't know what they've got on board until you've got some chance to get it out.
Yeah.
That will be the key in terms of an education system that will actually work to create a better world.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Nicholas. It's been such a joy talking to you, not just today, but on the previous occasions as well. And I hope that the people watching it have got as much out of it as I have. Is there anything else you wanted to kind of say before we wrap up?
I would just say that because we're at this time of massive change and on the verge of ascending to the next level of consciousness, it's just about following the heart in each moment and creating much love for ourselves and for others around us, and creating as much unity as possible, and staying at a high state of consciousness. Because the world is, a lot of the hidden stuff around the world is going to be disclosed of what's really been going on the earth. It's about us holding a higher state of consciousness to take us through the disclosure of the truth of how this reality was created and what's been done to us, so that we can create a better world overall. And from that state of high consciousness, hold the place stable as we go through this massive change, which is going to impact our civilization enormously, both at a physical and emotional and a spiritual level, as we rise in consciousness. Because in these times of transition, it's important to hold a stable seed of higher consciousness, because that's going to pull the whole thing through. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I think we're so on the brink, and we're so at the point where we're going to have to hold the space for a lot of people struggling to make sense of some of the revelations that are imminent. I mean, so imminent, it's unreal. So it's kind of almost like watch this space and and just be there for others, isn't it? Just kind of do what you can do to help them make the adjustment, because in the end it's going to be their cognitive dissonance and their kind of attachment to a certain way that they think reality is, that's going to be the cause of their suffering, isn't it?
Well, everyone's going to get a massive red pill that's coming our way really soon. And so it's about helping people cope with the change in the reality. That's the most important thing, because everyone does their best in life, usually. And and some of us who had the opportunity to find out what's going on earlier and make a difference, we're all here to help everyone else who's still, trying to get the idea of what's actually going on here and how do I cope with it. Yeah,
it's a big project. Well, so next week, Monday the 16th of July is going to be my last show. So I think, on that note, it'll be something of a sort of reflections and a review. I'll kind of hope to round things up. It won't be the end of the story, of course, by any means. We're still really in the early stages of what's unfolding, but things are going to get pretty interesting pretty quickly. So for now, thank you very much once again to Nicholas for joining us this evening. I really appreciate it, taking the time to be part of this show on several occasions now. My name's Sarah Chaplin. Thanks very much for watching this episode of Giant Steps, and I'll see you for the last time next week.
Okay, thanks for having us, Sarah.
You're very welcome.
Humanity has been on an epic journey of discovery, learning the truth about the world we live in. New discoveries about the true origins of humanity, ancient history, free energy, as well as the systematic corruption of world governments are now on the forefront of our daily reality. Is the world headed towards destruction based on control and power? Or is an opportunity now being presented to shift and uplift into a higher consciousness? My name is Mel V, co-founder and creative director of Conscious Consumer Network, an independent broadcast network that was launched on the 1st of January 2015. In the last 3 years, Conscious Consumer Network has broadcast over 2,800 shows in multiple languages, featuring guests from across the world, whilst creating media that is aimed at the creation of a free, fair, peaceful, just, sustainable world. Conscious Consumer Network provides full training and an interactive support network for all broadcasters, and we are always looking for inspiring and educational content.
Hi, this is Lady Liberty.
And this is Miro Siegel.
In 2018, Conscious Consumer Network has expanded to multiple broadcast locations, increasing our availability and reach across the world, remaining on the cutting edge of independent media. If we wish to create a better world, We must first create better media geared towards real education instead of indoctrination.
You guys really are what changing the world is going to be about. It's educating kids at a grassroots level.
Having become a pillar of stability in the turbulent world of independent media, we have even more going on in 2018. Conscious Consumer Network is a publicly funded network, and we rely on all of you to keep us on the air. Show your support for independent media by donating to our 2018 Network Support Fund. Dare to seek a better world. Support independent media.